The following is an Operation Podcast production.
I just feel like there's nothing I can't do because I saw someone do the impossible each and every day. Just because you didn't have it doesn't mean you're not meant for it, and doesn't mean you don't deserve it. I had a chance to sign with another team, but honestly, I loved competing, the environment and being around my teammates. I don't know if I really loved football. And I think for so long I was afraid to share my own story openly. I've had to develop new forms of identity, but that doesn't mean that it changes who I am and my integrity. And that was the hardest thing for me to grasp.
The art of the pivot.
After my time on The Bachelorette, I went through, a lot of chaos media-wise with the public split. I never, said anything bad or negative, or I just kind of moved forward with my life.
It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, no matter what you've done or you haven't done, no matter what you have been through, no matter how hard it's been, look at you now.
Resilience for me is a responsibility.
Hey, y'all, I'm so excited to announce my partnership with Timeline Nutrition. As you know, I am a cancer survivor, and I am always looking for any edge for longevity and wellness. And this Swiss life science company has spent 10 years in research and development, infusing their products with urolithin A, which is a mitochondrial function improver. Their MitoPure is my favorite of their products, but every one of their products is infused with this magical urolithin A, which improves cellular energy, muscle strength, endurance, decreases inflammation, and ultimately removes the damage in your mitochondrial cells. This is magic in a box. Please go to www.timelinenutrition.com/LAMN10 to get your discount on these life-saving, life-changing products.
Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in, because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now.
Hey, y'all. Welcome. You know what? So funny. People have been leaving comments about me saying y'all, or the way my S's.
I say y'all all the time.
The way my S's sound. I mean, people are getting granular with the feedback these days. It's really like, whoa.
Where are you from?
My S's. Philadelphia originally.
Philly? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm South Dakota, so when I start saying certain things, those O's come out, and y'all is common, but I guess it's, or for me anyway.
Anyway, I just said y'all, but this is all going into the podcast, by the way. I'm not even going to edit any of this out.
Go.
This keeping it real, right? I just said y'all, and it immediately popped into my head. Oh, right. It's amazing what happens when you put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And all the feedback comes in, and we're human, and we go, oh God, I just said y'all. People don't like it when I say y'all. You know what? I say y'all. So, hey, y'all.
There it is.
Hey,
I'm right here with you.
Yeah, right? Okay, we are back with another episode of Look at Me Now. And I have a spectacular guest that I have been trying to get on this show since it started. And I'm so excited that it finally worked out. So Dale Moss is here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. This is long overdue.
Overdue.
But we made it work, so it's all
did.
good.
And timing is everything. I believe that the divine timing is for us sitting here right now. And for those of you who are just being introduced to Dale, he is a former NFL player. And he is I want to just say all the things, right?
Okay, let's go.
So he is a former NFL player. He is also a media personality, but he does some really spectacular things. Like, he is very devoted to the Special Olympics, and he is a filmmaker, and he is an actor, and he's just like this multi-hyphenate, passionate, creative, jack of all trades. And I don't think there's any shame in that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't limit all the things that we are here to do and to shine at.
Yeah. No, I honestly feel like that'll be the theme of the podcast today.
Let's go.
Right? And you talk about timing, but it's so true. Lived a lot of lives, but everything makes sense. And if anything, I just go after things that I'm passionate about, even if they seem a little far-fetched. And, that hasn't steered me wrong yet. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
I mean, well said, right? Because it does take a certain amount of grit, a certain amount of commitment, a certain amount of resilience, a certain amount of, I want to say self-belief. I mean, you'll walk me into whether that's true or not, to be able to get yourself to the highest levels of a profession like the NFL, right? To put yourself where you are, you know, in a series like The Bachelorette, which he was also on, because, you know, why not do all the things while we're here in this body, in this life? But I mean, I'm curious about that. But I think what's going to walk us into that is, as you know, we always look back before we get to the present and move forward. So can you walk us back to the very beginnings of, you know, what created the person that sits here today and says, like, I go for it?
Yeah, it's my family. My mother, you know, she passed away in 2017, but the strongest, truest, purest person ever. And, you know, growing up, I grew up in South Dakota, small town Midwest. And I didn't really know my mom's side of the family because they disowned her because of biracial marriage. And we grew up in an all-white community, so we were very, very isolated. My dad struggled with drug and alcohol addiction through the time I was like 21, but when I was younger, it was really, really rough. And because of that, my mom had to really handle almost everything. We were poor as shit. I couldn't go stay at friends' houses because I was the black kid in the community, and they thought I'd be, you know, a bad influence on their kids and their family. But, you know, I would always watch my mother, and she was working multiple jobs just to keep a roof over our head. You know, there were times we had to sleep in, you know, the Mission, and this is in South Dakota. But she never complained. She never said, why me? And I honestly never even saw her like cry in some of the tough moments. And to me, I've always held on to that as like, if she could do that and she could raise 4 kids and literally by herself, most of the time, there's nothing in the world that I can't do. And, you know, I've carried this over with how I observe and approach people today. And I think that's also why I've been so fearless in going after things, because I'm a dreamer. I believe anything is possible. And I saw with my mom that I could never even fathom being able to do that right now. And she did the impossible, and she gave me and my sisters a chance at life and to live the life that we, you know, bigger than we could have even dreamed. So, yeah, I think I just feel like there's nothing I can't do because I saw someone do the impossible each and every day.
That is really remarkable, because there are a lot of people in that situation that don't handle it as, I'm going to say, heroically or she-roically as your mom did. Did you ever ask her, this is just my own innate curiosity, like, did you ever ask her how she was able to achieve that mindset?
It was as kids. I think there was probably part of it that she didn't know if she could ever go back home. So there was probably that resilience and that fear of saying, if I fail, we don't have anybody else. So I have to make this work for my family. And I think, you know, sometimes you probably have, like, you want to prove people wrong a little bit, but I think that might have faded pretty quickly. It was purely out of love and wanting to keep our family together, because she wasn't with her family anymore. And I know that tore her up more than I could even put into words. But I also know that she was never going to allow that to happen with our family.
And when you would hit personal struggles, as all children do growing up, right? And it sounds like you definitely had your fair share. When you hit those struggles, how would she parent you in those moments? Like, knowing that is what she would model to you, that is obviously what she embodied and believed. How did she impart that to you when she would parent you when you were going through hard times?
I mean, my dad and my mom always said, you know, baby Dale, I'm a junior, you're the man of the house. So at a young age, I took on that responsibility. And, you know, my dad went through his struggles, but my dad was a great father. You know, some chaotic times, but both of my parents spoke to me like an adult. They didn't put conditions around the things I could do. They just taught me right from wrong, and they trusted me to make the right decisions. And when I was going through tough times, they were right there with me and saying, no matter what happens, if you fall on your face, if you make a mistake, if something really bad happens, we're going to be here and we will never love you any differently. We'll never judge you. And I think that's something that, and I've observed a lot of kids don't have. I saw this study and they talk about the most successful children and what leads to that. And that's having a family structure where they know they can go to their family or their parents for everything without being judged. And that's what I had. And also in an environment, in a community early on where we weren't accepted, if I was if my parents didn't accept and step up to the plate when they know what it's like to be judged or pushed aside, what kind of parenting is that? So I think they knew what we were up against, not only with the obstacles internally with our family, but also the environment we were around. So they were going to create the safest, most secure, and consistent space they possibly could.
That's really amazing because it speaks volumes, right, to what actually matters. Mm-hmm. We put so much emphasis on externals. We put so much emphasis on material things. Mm-hmm. We put so much emphasis on, nature versus nurture and all of these different things. But really, at the end of the day, it's about the love. Yeah. Right? It's about knowing whatever I do or I don't do, I am worthy of love. That is something that a mentor of mine says all the time. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing how easily we can fall off of that knowing. Yeah. Right? That certainty, that trust in ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Of our inherent value not being measurable, the market value on us not going up or down based on, whatever trend is happening, but that, it's immovable. And that inherently gives us the resilience to get up and to keep going and to put one foot in front of the other and say, I believe in myself. I'm going to take the next step forward.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree entirely. And it's interesting when you talk about people feeling as if they're worthy of love. Mm-hmm. There's never been a time in my life or in a relationship where I didn't know that I was worthy. And I've been very, very surprised, and I've seen it show up in even my relationships where people don't believe that, and it's hard for me to relate because I felt so much consistent and real love at a young age. And that's why I can show up for people the way I do. And that's something that I've never questioned as far as, if I'm worthy of it. But that knowing allows me to give so much to people, my passions. And I'm not afraid of that. I feel like my greatest strength is being able to love in a very, very deep, passionate way. And I know that's like a gift that I got from my mom and a gift from God for sure.
I'm so curious what you would say to somebody who's listening to this right now and going, I didn't have that. I didn't have that. I don't understand that. I don't know how to access that. What might you say to somebody who's listening and going, God, that sounds really great?
Yeah. Just because you didn't have it doesn't mean you're not meant for it, and doesn't mean you don't deserve it. And I think the environments that you create are so, so important, and you have so much control in doing that. And I think the other thing I would say is just because you haven't experienced that yet, don't lose hope on it. And you've got to open up your heart if you really want to receive it. The things that you give the most to often hurt like hell if they don't work out. But the joy you get if it does is something that you can never put into words.
Better to have loved and lost than never loved at all, right?
Exactly. And they say love is a losing game. Like, you only got to get right once. But and when they say, when you do,
it's not a losing game. I've been happily married, for a long time. I mean, look, this is something that I say to my clients all the time. I'm like, look, I am married to a magnificent human, and I really believe that for as long as we both shall live, we will be, happy and in love and all of the things. But I can't count on that love to be what fills me up. I can't rely on that love solely, because as much as I believe we'll be together for all time, he could come to me one day and go, I fell in love with my secretary. Sorry. Or God could take him. You know what I mean? Like I have no control over whether or not I'm going to continue to get that love.
Yep.
Right. So I appreciate that love while it's here, but I can't necessarily count on that love to be what reminds me that I'm lovable all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's really great that it sounds like your growing up was something that you embodied and you internalized as, oh, I actually can do this for myself because I've been taught that I'm worthy of it. So I am going to hold that worthiness in and of myself. So like now your mom's not here, but you can always turn to that inherent knowingness that she gifted you, that whether she's here or not here to give you that love, you're worthy of it. And that's so beautiful. That's like a gift that, that can never, it doesn't ever leave you. Yeah.
It's the greatest gift I've ever received. And, I think, a lot of the situations growing up that might seem chaotic or terrible actually have turned into my biggest strengths and my biggest superpowers. And my dad would always say that your name is everything, right? Always treat people with respect, always show up, and integrity is the most important thing. And he'd say, like, no matter what you're going through right now, as long as you're yourself, it'll break through. As long as you lead with love, it's going to break through. And I saw that at a young age. I just stayed who I was. I had a great, fun, like, loving family. And over a period of time, even though, I was a kid who couldn't even go stay at my friends' houses, they became like a second family. And that was all just out of love and consistency. So I learned that at a young age in an environment where I believe most kids would probably go a different direction. But I saw that, and it really opened up a lot of doors for my family. And it changed my perspective on life and judgment as a whole, because I was judged early.
For sure. Well, it's like sort of like your kryptonite is what makes you a superhero, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, tell me, how did you get into, like, as you sort of like get older and you're coming more into yourself, and because you had such a solid foundation of like trusting yourself and believing in yourself and loving yourself and having all of this permission to do you, to be you, to do you, where did that start to take shape in, oh, this is who I want to be, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to pursue?
I think college is, towards the end of my college time, is where I really, really had a clear vision on the things I wanted to do. I was, multi-sport athlete in high school, McDonald's All-American, played basketball and football in college. Actually played 4 years of basketball at a Division I university, was going to play professional basketball abroad. And I was like, I don't want to leave and go to Europe and leave my family. And I was recruited for both. The university.
No big deal, by the way.
Well, the university held a scholarship for me because when I came in as a freshman, they're like, hey, if you'll consider it and come back for an extra year at the end of your basketball term, we'd love to have you play football still. So I kicked it around, and I had seen guys who got a chance at the NFL, and I hadn't played football, since high school because I was a Division I basketball player. But I knew athletic ability, and I always say, like, I'll never step into something if I don't believe I can have real success in it. And it was also something that I kind of wanted to prove people wrong, or maybe more so prove myself right. So I went out, and I grinded it out in the spring, and then I ended up being, one of the top receivers in our conference in that 1 year of football. Was in the top 5 in school history at the time in receiving, had a great team around me, and it gave me a shot at the NFL. And that time was really where it clicked. If it's like, hey, if you really set your mind to it and devote your time and your focus and belief to something, like, you can make it happen. And, that's me getting a shot at the NFL from a small Division I school in eight months of playing. And yeah, that was where it really shifted. And, I didn't have a long stint in the NFL, but regardless, it showed me what's possible. And it allowed me to build a life well beyond sports in the toughest city in the world, in New York City, in the entertainment and fashion space.
What happened at the end of the football? Why didn't it last longer?
So 4 years, went through a couple coaching changes in Chicago. My last preseason had a shoulder injury, while we were evaluating if it was going to be, a serious labral tear, or if I, just come back early. I ended up getting released from Chicago, and I had a chance to sign with another team. But honestly, and people ask me this a lot, I loved competing. I really loved the environment and being around my teammates, but I don't know if I really loved football. I feel like it was something I did. So when Arizona was going to sign me, I had to have a really long conversation with my girlfriend at the time and just sit and think, what do I really, really, really want to do? And I decided to, step away from the game. I didn't want to bounce around, and I wanted to build a life in entertainment. I went to school for film, digital production, and I think for so long I was afraid to share my own story openly, just because I wanted to protect it and protect my family, that I got really, really into the idea of sharing other people's. I've always wanted to direct and produce, and I signed with the management team, went out to New York, and ended up booking a couple projects. And it's like that New York story. I didn't know anyone out there, no family or anything, but I went out there intending to be there a week. And I've been there 9 years, and I just never left. Yeah. So
the art of the pivot.
Yeah. And that's something that continually I think we all have to do. We have to reinvent ourselves. Our identity is often so tied to one specific thing.
Yeah.
And when that shifts or is taken away, you have to pivot. So I've had to not only accept that things change throughout my life, I've had to develop new forms of identity, but that doesn't mean that it changes who I am and my integrity. And that was the hardest thing for me to grasp. I'd see myself in one space, but if I was going into another space, I didn't want to be boxed into this, or I didn't want that to go away. And as I've gotten older over a period of time, I've learned, and this is what I'm still learning, the only way you're going to be boxed into a certain category is if you allow yourself to be, and that's self-inflicted.
Yes. Well, it's about interestingly enough, it's about parts work, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this idea and concept that there's all these different parts of us. And oftentimes not oftentimes, all the time, we are really holding this dichotomy within us of, two sides of us, the side that wants something and the side that doesn't want that same thing, right? The side that has the light and the side that has the shadow, the part that's excited about it and the part that's scared about it, whatever it may be, right? But there is a whole detachment theory that happens, right? When it's like, oh, I have to detach myself from, my ego wanting to grab onto that identity and everything that is going to come with it, not come with it, right? The things that I want, the things that I don't want, rather than it being this sort of transcend and include opportunity, right? Which is, oh, I've been there, I've done that, I've been this person, right? That all comes with me, but I get to also evolve to the next iteration of who I am. And it doesn't mean that I'm throwing that out, but it's also this idea of holding things with an open palm, right? This idea of, I loved football and I'm really good at football, but I don't have to clamp down on football, especially when my deepest knowing is I have a different calling right now, right? And I think that there is so much permission in your story for people that are listening to this, and to hear it in their own stories, right? I can't tell you how many people I coach that are like, well, I'm in this career, right? This corporate career, and I'm really, really successful and I make a lot of money. It's killing me. It's depleting me. I'm burnt out. I'm drained. I'm this, I'm that. And what I really want to do is go be an artist or whatever, right? But they don't, right? There is this sense of, over attachment to this identity, to this, to certain material aspects of things. And it's warranted, right? I would totally get it. But in the same breath, when that person's on their deathbed, they're not going to go, wow, I wish I would have, worked harder. I wish I would have stayed at that job longer.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think what you're talking about in this art of the pivot, this idea of being able to reinvent yourself, it all centers around this idea of unattaching yourself from any one particular job or any one particular relationship being your answer.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I feel like it's so easy to get attached when you have a timing in your head that you think these things should happen. And that's a lesson that I've had to really, really learn is patience. Also, things, they take a lot longer than we expect, right? And there's so many things that you want to do, but it takes time. And I will say that, the detachment side of things, I've been able to definitely not hold on to things that long. And that doesn't mean that they hurt or they don't hurt. And I feel like in some ways it's great because I can just move on to the next thing, understand the situation. I don't have regrets really with anything. I feel like there's always a lesson, whether that's a relationship, a career, or business situation, death, like all the things. And I've tried to take that approach. But moving past things and not holding on to it for an extended period of time has probably been one of the biggest things that has helped me to keep going. Because I've had some tough times. Like I've had a lot of success and I feel like I'll always have success, but I went through the downward spiral after football. I wasn't making as much money as these other guys and I was supporting a family and I wasn't even like being reckless, but you have 2 places here, you're, off-season training, doing all these things. And I remember, I was like really, really low at one point because I've supported my family since high school. I used to bartend at night playing 2 Division I sports to pay extra bills at home. And I had to ask my family for help. And I went out to New York and I had a really big project that worked out. And, I thought it was going to be a game changer, but then, the clients took so long to pay and it was just a huge chaotic thing. But I remember, which is so crazy. And thankfully this moved pretty quick, but there was a time where I was so focused on making it in New York right away that I was like, I'm not going to waste money. I'm not going to spend money on a hotel room. I'm not going to spend money on this Airbnb for like such and such. And there was like, I booked a Nike campaign and there was like 2 days where I just took the subway to JFK Airport, sat in the diner all night. So I didn't have to waste money in the, Manhattan, and then went right back to set at 5 a.m. And I was like passing out like at every point I could, but I was like, if I don't give myself the resources to make it here, or if I put this money here, and I was scraping the bottom of the barrel, I was just like, there's nothing, I'm not going to allow myself to go back home or not succeed here after, a couple of these opportunities, sprung up. And this happened really quick. And again, thankfully I was able to move through that. But I think that's also been something that's been in the back of my mind forever, or at least since I was a kid, because we slept in missions, I ain't ever going back to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what if you don't, like, I'm hearing like such a fucking guttural, like, I will do whatever it takes. I will do whatever it takes. Success is the only option. What is like deep down in there that goes like, if I don't succeed, then what?
I don't know that answer. And it's not a pressure. I feel like it's a responsibility. Like, I don't think that, people can, success means a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Mine is living on my own terms,
Yep.
doing the things I'm passionate about, positively affecting people's lives.
Yep.
And I want to give back and impact.
Yeah.
For example, acting. Like, I'm not going into acting to be famous and make tons of money. You
Yeah,
know?
you do love it.
It's a form of expression and something that I love. But it's more so, it wasn't about going back to South Dakota and like the fear of like failing in that capacity. It was more so I'm meant to be here in New York City. And if this is the toughest city in the world, like I'm going to make it here. And if I choose to like leave the city, that's on my own terms, but I'm not running away from it. And there's so many resources here and there's so many possibilities. So even though I'm going through a really, really rough season right now, I'm going to figure it out. And
There's just such a
takes.
unique texture to your ability to do that. Like, it sounds like, you know, out of basketball, you go into football and you're like, I've got 8 months to do the impossible.
Yeah.
And you do it.
Yeah.
You know, I've got this opportunity in New York and it's going to be nearly impossible, but I'm going to do it. And that is a very rare quality for people to embody. I'm just so curious about like where that commitment comes from, that level of determination and ability, because it really is very rare.
Yeah. I think when they say like you get it out of the mud or whatever, like I just saw where we were at from a starting point as a family. And I just know that there's always brighter days and you can always move through it. And, you know, fast forward, you know, I ended up being, you know, over the course of like 3 years, I was like Wilhelmina, like their top booking sports and fitness model, you know, one of the biggest agencies in the world. When I started, I was like, yo, you know, I've never been here. I'm struggling right now. But within a matter of months, like my life had already started changing like rapidly.
Yeah, it's such a different quality of resilience. And I'm highlighting this for the people that listen to this podcast, you know, religiously, that often hear a story like yours, right? And then hear that the person fell into drugs, fell into, you know, self-mutilation of some kind, fell into really hard, really tough times as a result of, you know, sort of the repercussions of what I'm going to call trauma.
Yeah.
Right? A trauma history. And they have their own pathway of resilience. Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of sitting down with them for this. But it's really remarkable to hear your version of resilience through your story, because you actually just sprouted wings like right from the start.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost like resilience for me is a responsibility. And I owe that to myself and I owe that
Put
to
that
my
in
family.
make that a meme. Somebody make it a meme.
Resilience is a responsibility to me. And
tattoo that somewhere. I don't know.
Hey, I'm looking for some new ink. Maybe
Yeah,
right
let's
there.
go. Let's go. That
noted.
is a thing.
I'm going to send you a picture when I
That is a
get that
thing.
ink.
That is your new motto, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is. It is a responsibility. And I know that truly like my relationship with my parents as a kid is what has allowed me to have that mindset. I don't hold on to judgment. Like I knew all the stuff that a kid shouldn't know about my parents. I knew about the drugs. I knew about, you know, sex, like all these things. And they didn't try to shelter me. They wanted me to know exactly what was going on, because they truly believed I was the man of the house. And like, you know, as a family, we just got through things together. So that helped me a lot, because I think we all have traumas, but truly I dealt with my trauma at a very, very young age. And it's been fascinating to me. And I see it probably the most in like relationships I've had, how much people don't deal with their trauma from an early stage, or they carry it to, you know, in their 30s or, and there's still this attachment that it's like, because their parents did this, when in my belief is like, you have a choice to hold on to that or create a new life and let that go. Right. I dealt with a lot of mine early, and I've also really worked with personal growth and development coaches. I've went back to school for holistic health coaching, stress and anxiety management, even just understanding like trauma. And I did that for my own personal growth, because I wanted to understand myself and I wanted to understand my family and my parents, because it allowed me to not only accept them at a deeper level, but I knew that it was going to change my perspective on everyone I interacted with. Yeah, it's my childhood shaped me in the most chaotic environment that most people would think. And they're like, oh, that's so sad. Like, I feel like I don't know how you got through that. I got through it because, of love. And like, my parents were amazing people and they worked their ass off. And they never like played the victim ever.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because you bring up a good point. When you are, I say this a lot of times with clients when they're starting to make change, right? When you start to heal and you start to show up differently, but everything else in your world stays the same, right? It's like you showing up differently is like throwing a pebble in the pond and it starts to ripple and ripple and ripple. And it can't not affect everything around you.
Yeah.
You're different. The world is the same, but that's going to change the chemical reaction between you and that world, right? And it's interesting to hear that you're like, I came from a trauma history. I dealt with the trauma history. I've committed myself to personal development, personal transformation, healing. And then I show up into relationships that work hasn't been done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's only so much that I can, it's like you can lead a horse to water, right? But ultimately, like, it's a positron and a negatron. Like at a certain point, like the magnetism isn't going to hold or whatever because you're at a certain place in your life, but it sounds like maybe in certain relationships, other people that you're in relationship with, and it doesn't even need to be intimate. It could be friends.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Just at different places. And I've had to learn, over the last, X amount of years, that, sometimes people can never meet you where you're at. I talk about it with, my coach very heavily. It's like, he says, you've done so much work that your capacity is so high that some people just aren't capable to get where you're at. And for me, that's where I've had to mature. I'll say mature. I'll say I've had to have growth and understanding that, that actually is the case. Sometimes people aren't ever going to get to where you're at. I've also had to, put boundaries in to protect myself and also kind of have some non-negotiables when I enter into these situations. And I've had to learn that recently, very, very heavy, because I love deeply. And I probably have this mentality where, I definitely have this mentality that you can love through all of these things. And if you, love deep enough or are very, very consistent, it can heal some of the wounds from, someone else's past. That's not always the case.
No, it was with your family.
It was.
You guys had a lot of trauma, but there was so much love that somehow.
But we were all doing the work together.
That's right.
So
that's right.
If
one is showing up and the other one isn't, then it's not going to work out. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I remember a long time ago, somebody, a teacher or coach or somebody had said to me, when you love somebody, on a scale of 1 to 100, your 100 could be, like gangbusters, right?
Yeah.
And somebody else could be giving you their 100, right? But their 100 isn't gangbusters for you. It's only hitting your 60% mark.
Yeah.
Like the math isn't right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's almost the cross to bear, right? Of being a superhero it's really hard to be with a mere mortal, right? In a way, it's like, right?
No, I get what you're saying, though.
It is a certain sense of self-protection and self-preservation to say, like, I am here and you're here, and it's just there comes a certain point where what's best for both of us is. You've got this growing to do, and I've already done this growing, and we both need to level up, but maybe it's not together.
Yeah, and that can be in so many different areas. And
sure.
Again, that's where I've learned, and we talk about ego, right?
All the time.
We want to have things be the ideal, but sometimes the ideal is not the reality of this current situation. But I've definitely learned. Like I said, that to be more accepting, be more patient and understanding, and not take some of these things personal. And if you go into a situation in the right way and you treat people the right way and you really genuinely love them, it's a lot easier to get to that place. It doesn't mean it's easy if some things don't work out. But I don't really have too many bad relationships. I've had one pretty chaotic one.
Yeah.
Well,
I think at this level, it's more like puzzle pieces.
Yeah, it's just finding the right
It's
fit.
like, oh, this puzzle piece doesn't fit with this puzzle piece. It doesn't make this puzzle piece bad or this puzzle piece good. It just means we go somewhere else in the picture, right? And it sort of takes the pressure off of making someone wrong or someone right, or one better or one worse. It's just, it's not a fit. It's not a fit. And we tried it, and I'm glad we tried it, because now we know that this isn't where it goes.
Yeah. And timing and so many things is everything. I think we
Timing
want
is
to force our
everything.
timing, but timing is so
It's like
so
you and I
important.
sitting down for this podcast. It wasn't meant to be until today.
It's timing. It really is.
Everything is timing. And it's, and people, they hold a lot of emotion around timing. I know you were referencing it before, like timeline. Sometimes we have to be patient, all of that stuff. And the thing about, timing is, so often people they want to arm wrestle the universe, and you're never going to win that wrestling match. You're never going to get down with trying to defeat, like the collective unconscious. It's just not going to happen. But, I actually did like a thing on social media recently where I was like, you're not late, and I gave all these references of people who, this person, Julia Childs didn't put out her first cookbook until she was, a very mature woman.
Yeah.
Vera Wang didn't design her first dress until she was a very mature woman. The guy who got McDonald's, I think he didn't start it till he was 60. I mean, there's just so many examples of, giving yourself the opportunity. It's like you don't rush a flower to bloom.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when it's time, and to love yourself through the process rather than bully yourself through the process, or make time the enemy. Time isn't the enemy. Time is just time.
Yeah. And that's the lesson that has been the most difficult for me. I'm used to things happening very, very quickly. Whether it was football, whether the things in modeling.
You've been spoiled.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But I grind and I execute.
Yeah.
But I had to learn with the pandemic, like right before the pandemic, I had built up some of the biggest projects of my life. I was so excited, like things were going really, really great. And the pandemic just obviously changed everyone's world. Things I was doing in the podcasting space or even the acting space, and then leading into a strike, I had to learn that like you can do everything right, and sometimes things aren't going to work out. And, even this time, like I said, I'm not going into acting to be famous and make all this money. Like I want to have success in it, no question. And it's a great form of expression, but like, it's a long road. It's a long road. This is the worst the industry's been in probably 50 plus years.
Yeah.
And that's been something, because I've been on set or in front of a camera or under the lights since the time I was like in high school, realistically. And those are places I really like to be. I love to be on set with a team. And it's probably been the greatest gift for me just to look at myself and like the things I can control and really, really just have a different outlook on like how things should happen in my life, because it's really all, it's just giving up control. We all want to control everything.
That's it. Really like cut print. That's the book. That's that's everything, right?
Yep.
I mean, when you really boil it down, like that's even what the ego is for. It's all about, we want to control it. We want to control the timing. We want to control, we want this, we don't want that. Everything is, how can I clamp down to create a sense of certainty, right? And that is the human experience, is one of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it's juggling that, right? That desire for certainty, knowing that nothing is certain.
Yeah.
And that's quite a trip.
That's
quite a trip.
It really is.
Quite a trip for us humans. Okay, so now in this present moment, you are pursuing acting and you are actively working on things having to do with the Special Olympics and making documentaries and doing things like that. Like, where are you really intently focused right now?
For my own personal just enjoyment, the acting side is very fulfilling for me. As I said, I never wanted to go into acting. I never had any intent of going into acting. I always wanted to host because like I never wanted to be anyone but myself. And I just had my idea of what acting was completely different. And you know, my agent had sent me an audition, and she's like, "Hey, you should audition for this role. I read the character description. I think it's very interesting." And I'm like, I've never taken an acting class. I've never auditioned for an acting class. The role did align. And I was like, all right, whatever. I got nothing to lose. I auditioned for it, and I booked the lead in the movie. And this was, it came out in 2022. But I remember just like, even after it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm excited about it. And I didn't even think about the magnitude of it, because it was, you know, a multi-million-dollar production, and we were filming in New Orleans for a week. And then when I was on the flight, they're like, you got to come in 2 weeks, and we're going to start filming. And I was like, all right, 2 weeks, no big deal. And it didn't hit me till I was on the flight. I was like, holy shit. If I don't come through on this and execute, like I have an entire production team of like 75 people relying on me for this.
Yeah.
And it was like a little moment of panic.
Yeah.
But shortly after,
it's not a team sport when you're alone in front of the camera.
And I didn't know what to expect. Like I've been in big studios and stuff like that before, but I was just kind of figuring it out. But the best thing I did, or the mindset that I took when I went into this, and I'm so grateful for the directors, Christine Conrad, and everyone on the entire production team. But I was like, fuck it, I'm here now. So they're stuck with me.
Yeah.
So I might as well take some of the pressure off it, bring myself out as much as possible within this role. Commit and just accept whatever happens at that point. And it was so liberating, and I had so much fun on the production. And after it, I fell in love with it. And, since then, I finished filming a movie in December, that'll come out at the start of next year. And even though the industry's tough, like that filled, my soul in a way that like probably things haven't happened like that since football. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I know that's a personal thing. On the documentary side, these are stories I'm passionate about, and we're going to get at least one of these done. There's 2 in development right now, and I understand those are long games. But I've learned and been very, very hands-on in the development of these. I'm very, very passionate about it. The team at Radical Media, who's an Academy Award-winning production company, is backing me on these things. So as long as I know I'm supported and people believe that, like, I'm a great partner, like, I'll dive in and I'll figure out a way. And that's my approach on those things. And then even just like sitting on this podcast right now, I think, after my time on The Bachelorette, I went through, a lot of chaos media-wise with the public split, and things that I can't control. I never, said anything bad or negative, or I just kind of moved forward with my life. But I do know that like during that time, I was like, you guys are going to make an opinion about me anyway, whether it's right or wrong. So I'm just not going to share any of it, because in my mind, it's like, you don't deserve to see all these things.
You haven't earned the right to my story.
You haven't earned the right to my story. And I took that approach, and now I'm really focused on sharing more of my story socially, digitally, getting creative. I have all these ideas and all these things. I have access to so many great people. And it's an approach now of how can I help and impact more people?
I think that's really important, right? Because who do I trust with my story, right? It's tricky, because I am somebody that shares everything all the time. And for better or worse, people, I share everything all the time. I'm very transparent. But the reason that I do that is I do it in service of others, right? And I only am able to do it. I didn't used to be like this. I've only been able to do it once I fell in love with myself, once I trusted myself, once I said, I actually don't give a flying rat's ass what anybody else has to say about what I share or how I share it or why I share it, right? Which harkens back to the beginning of this podcast when I said, oh, I'm saying y'all, and somebody said not to say y'all. But yesterday, my son, my 10-year-olds, I have two sons. I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. My 10-year-old boy was playing Little League and he was pitching. And he's an okay pitcher, you know, whatever. But he had a really bad game yesterday pitching. It was awful. I was like, as a mom, like dying inside, right?
You knew how, yeah.
And I just saw him struggling, and it's like, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say. I tried saying things. I tried not saying things. You know, what do you do, right? I mean, because you just love them more than anything.
Got to go through it.
He did. He had to go through it, right? And the other team was being really nasty, and they were taunting him and saying things to him, and he and it's so frustrating because he is good, but he had a bad game. And after the game was over and they lost by 1 run, he was hysterically crying. And you know, I said a lot of different things to him, right? Just coaching him the best you can when you're their mother, right? But I'm also a coach. I'm trying my tricks. But it was actually when we got home, we were getting out of the car and he was still crying. And I said, you know, somebody said really something nasty to mommy about her podcast. Somebody said something really not nice to mommy about her podcast. Does that mean I should not do a podcast anymore? Do you think what they said is true about me just because somebody who's never met me and heard one podcast had something to say? Do I give up? Is what they say true? And I should go and run and hide in a corner and not tell my story anymore and not help people? He said, no. I said, right. So some little leaguer said to you something about one round of pitching that didn't go so well.
Yeah.
Like, this is not who we are. This is not what we do, right? And so I'm going to get out there and I'm going to tell my story, and I'm not going to be precious about it. I'm not going to let anybody else tell my son, tell me who we are or what we're capable of.
Yeah.
That's a hard no, dog.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a no for me, dog.
That's a no for me, dog.
Yep.
Right? And so it really is, it's coming back to this idea of like taking ownership over, I can tell my story and everybody can say whatever they want about it because it actually has zero influence on the reality of who I am, of what I'm capable of how lovable I am, of the love that I am made of, right? And that's what this podcast is about, right? When we talk about Look at Me Now, and I'm sorry for the people who are hearing this for the 1,000th time, but when we talk about Look at Me Now, this is not about, oh, you bullied me when I was a kid, so ha ha ha, joke's on you. I'm this big time celebrity, or I'm this awesome athlete, like ha ha ha. Right? It's about being able to look in the mirror and say, no matter what you've done or you haven't done, no matter what you have been through, no matter how hard it's been, look at you now.
Yeah.
Look at you now. I am so ever loving proud of you. And there is nobody that gets to say boo about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just that self-reflection and acceptance, you know.
And I just went on a huge tangent, but I felt like it was important because, right? Like we are all parenting ourselves all the time. We really are. We're all just big kids running around with all of that childhood, you know, belief systems, like trying to get behind the driver's seat and like take us, you know, on a mad, crazy dash. And we've got to step in with our like healthy adult and say, well, wait. Okay, so you had a relationship blow up on camera, off camera, whatever, and it splashed across the tabloids. Like, it doesn't make anything, it doesn't change a damn thing about what is going on in here. Yeah,
it's like, you know, Karen from Nebraska but it's not even that. I never take like, I think the biggest thing is just if it's hard when we have an idea and a vision and, you know, we're human, everyone makes mistakes or things happen or whatever. But I feel like I'm so strong with my integrity and like who I am that, and also I think about like family, right? If something affects me, it affects my family, or I think I'm more, but yeah, that was just a growth phase. And a quote that I absolutely love, and I stand by this very, very heavily, and it is like, stop letting people who do so little for you control your mind, thoughts, and emotions, right? And I always, for my own purpose, say time in there,
Yes.
And now in this phase of my life and looking at myself, because we were talking at the beginning of the podcast and you're like, how do you want to be introduced? I rarely will say actor. I won't say host that often. I kind of like to just be more reserved and just keep things kind of general. But I've been on a lead in a movie. I got paid for that. It was pretty good.
It's not bragging if you've done it.
No, I just got off set filming a movie. I've hosted during Super Bowls. I was in studio hosting NFL stuff. So the Grammys, like I've been on those red carpets. So
it's being able to claim that.
Yeah.
And it's not even coming from a place of ego.
And that's the hardest thing. That's been the hardest thing for me over the period of my life is claiming things and feeling comfortable claiming it, because I'm so big on humility and never wanted to be seen as something I'm not,
Right.
And those things are important to me, but I just do them because I'm passionate about it. And like, I don't need all the
fanfare.
praise. Yeah.
I totally get it. And I do. I think that there's a fine line between owning something, claiming something, right? Embodying something and saying like, this is, and just an I am declaration that I am an actor. I am a host. I am these things, versus it being, you flashing some fancy badge that you have, right? To show off to people. There is a fine line between that, but we also have to be careful that we're not belittling ourselves or
it's like
cutting ourselves off from our
self-talk.
fullness, right? From our
it's
wholeness.
so important.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very easy to not give certain aspects of ourselves a seat at the table that they rightly deserve.
Yeah.
And especially if you really want to be successful at something, you got to name it and claim it.
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about, where we're at now. I'm main character energy.
Let's
100%.
go. I love it.
I feel the best I've felt in a very, very long time.
What do you credit that to? Feeling the best you felt in a long time.
I think changing environments was a really, really big thing for me. Sometimes.
You mean like moving? You like moved when you say changed environments?
I think I've just created healthier environments.
Just in general?
In general.
Got it.
I've taken more time to myself. I don't do well around people who are in fight or flight all the time. I'm very patient and things like that, but I definitely absorb from my environments. And also I think I'm so like this. And again, I have a really, really high threshold. And I understand and have patience with it, but I've just never operated like that. And especially if it's, a friend or, a family member, I care deeply for them and it really affects me and I want to solve that or try to ease that. But I think environments has been a big thing, and also just some deep work and accepting and also letting go of things, right? Sometimes the thing you want the most in life, you got to be willing to walk away from it if it controls you or if it's not for you. And I've done some deep work in that aspect. And I've just had to also kind of look at where I'm at and say, dude, like, be proud of yourself. Like, you've got a lot of really cool stuff going on that people would kill for.
Yeah.
And you've worked your ass off for it. And
it's okay to set a high bar.
And it's also like, I've given so much of my time away over the last 4 or 5 years to people and different things. And it's like, now it's like, fuck that. Like, this is my time and I am going to be selfish with it. I am going to be relentless in pursuing the things that I'm passionate about. I'm going to treat people, great, but I got to get it now. Like,
can we call out that selfishness gets a bad rap?
Yeah, it really, really does. And like, you got it. There's like, we always talk about balance. Like, if you're really going after things, like that balance is not always going to be there.
And like design is to be we are literally designed.
Yeah.
Like if a designer like made us, like they make a phone. I mean, we are designed to be selfish. We are designed to survive.
Yep.
Which means we have, if it's me and one other person for the Hunger Games, you know what I'm saying? Like that's our design, is like, I've got to be the one to get the food. I've got to be the one to get the weapons. I've got to be the one to get the water. I've got to be the one to be able to get the most sleep so that I'm the most alert and sharp. Like I've got to kill that animal over there before they do, because of my family will starve. You know what I'm saying? So we're literally designed to be selfish. We have to put our oxygen mask on first. Otherwise we are useless to anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there is a bad rap around selfishness. I think that, you know, selfishness is inherent, and it is actually the first thing that we are responsible to take care of.
Yeah.
Right? We can't be resilient. Resilience can't be our responsibility if we aren't resourced enough.
Yep.
And that comes from being selfish.
And even as you were speaking, you know, what keeps jumping out to me is accountability. And I'll accept it, that I may have to limit some relationships and sacrifice, if you will, certain things. But if I'm going to get where I want to go, I'm going to take full accountability in doing that. And by doing that, I have to be selfish.
You have to say no to some things to say yes to others.
Yeah. And, you know, even with my conversations with people, they've been very, very honest, and they've been very, very direct. And yeah, it was just really, really accepting that. And I think I went through a lot of losses this year. You know, I don't suffer from depression. And this is something that I don't feel like a lot of men specifically will talk about. Like I went through a depressed season at the start of this year, and I have never gone through that. You know, I had business partners, you know, take a lot of money from me. I was working on big projects and some fell through. I had multiple deaths in my family within a matter of a couple months. You know, there was a lot of things going on that my partner at the time was going through, which was very, very difficult. And, you know, just there were so many variables, and I just couldn't escape chaos. And normally I can. And yeah, I went through depression at the beginning of this year, and it didn't last, you know, an insane amount of time. I'd say, you know, 3 months I was out of it, but I was like telling my family, hey, like I'm scared right now. I'm having trouble getting out of bed for weeks at a time. And I'm just like hollow. And as a man, like talking to my girlfriend at the time, talking to my parents about it was really, really tough, because I've been the one who has held it down for everybody for so long. And I feel like I can have fire around me, and I'm just walking through it unscathed. And this one, and I think one of the biggest things that got me to that state was bearing stuff and shame and guilt for feeling that way. And kind of that ego too. I was like, I'm just going to work through this. I'm going to like get up and, you know, put on a face like everything's all Gucci. But that's not how it works. The best thing that happened for me was like shedding everything and saying, hey, I need y'all right now. And even if that's just a little bit more time, a little love, maybe a little distance, if I'm absorbing too much of the stuff that is in your life that I can't control. And, you know, the work that I've done with therapy and coaches and stuff over the year, without question, helped me so much, like handle that. But I think working through that, and, you know, some of the deaths and losses in family, I realized that how precious time was in a different way. And I think even just turning 36 in September, I just started thinking more about mortality. You know, my mom died at 63, and I'm like, what am I doing if I'm not giving everything to my passion and my dreams? And why in the hell am I dumbing myself down or taking the low road when my gift is my light, and that helps everybody? Yeah. And it just was kind of a switch that like flipped. And I know like it's there's some good things ahead. But I feel the most complete as just Dale, strip business and all that as me.
What do you credit with the switch flipping? Was it through coaching? Was it through a particular awareness that you had? Just for people that are listening and going, where's that switch for me?
I credit it loss of my high school coach, who was like a father to me, who supported me, and I don't think I would be where I was at.
So it's almost like a perspective shift.
Yeah, it was perspective. It was, I had numerous family members die in a short stint.
It all kind of like, it's interesting. Whenever I hear the word depression, I always get this vision of like pressure, like pressing. And it's like this internal pressure. Or a cooker that's like, like the pressure builds and builds and builds and builds, but underneath that is like a polished diamond, right? Waiting to be released. But it is like, how do you free yourself from that pressure? And I heard you sort of describe it in your own beautiful way about how like the pressure was building and building and building, and then somehow it released.
Yeah.
And like this new you, this polished diamond version of you was what was lying underneath. It is shining brightly now. Yeah. But it's interesting that what it took, they say like people don't change overnight. They say, like, it took me 20 years to stop smoking. Yeah. It's like, no, it took your best friend dying of lung cancer. That one moment for you to make that decision, whether it's out of, anxiety, or whether it's out of sadness or desperation or whatever it is, like that moment was the moment that you made the choice. It didn't take you 20 years to make the choice.
No, not at all.
Right. And it's that moment that you're speaking of, that perspective shift of, oh, wow, it's now or never.
Yeah. Well, and I think about like how proud my mom was of me for things. I think about, my family, my community. And, when my coach passed, we like the switch was, damn, there's so many other things I want to share. And there's so many things that we didn't do that would have been so cool. And it wasn't a regret thing, but it's like, he can't experience those with me anymore. And it's like, there's so much more that I wanted to give him.
You don't want to die with your music still inside you.
Yeah. And I was like, something's got to shift. And it changed my perspective on relationships, reciprocity, and things that if I was getting it or if I wasn't. But yeah, it was pretty quick. And these are all things that I knew. I just got away from it for a little while. But the greatest gift.
But he's back.
Yeah, for real. The greatest gift right now is just a form of expression.
Yeah.
And kind of a, not giving a fuck mentality, if you will, because, closed mouths don't get fed. If you don't go out and do it, you're wasting time and you're wasting your gifts.
Deathbed Dale, right? I always say this, like I say this to my clients. I say, who are you on your deathbed?
Yeah.
What decision is going to really serve you when you look at it from that perspective? Talk about a perspective shift, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to just take this pivot now and look forward. We're looking forward down the timeline on the horizon of what is coming your way. I mean, you've already sort of spoke to this, but just set the vision for us. Where are we going?
The vision moving forward, I'm going to be a leading figure in the entertainment business.
Yep.
I'm going to help shape the lives of younger generations as a thought leader and an educator through my life experiences. And honestly, like what's important to me, I just want to be the best brother, partner, son as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are my key focus areas.
And so it is.
And I'm directly in alignment with all the things that I want to do. Obviously I have individual projects that are really, really, exciting, and, I want to secure and make a strong living and do all these things. But at the root of it, like the areas I'm going in, I want respect, I want credibility, and I want to impact people's lives in a positive way. And I'm doing that through the documentary work, my advocacy with Special Olympics. I'm doing it for myself with my own form of expression in one of the toughest industries in the world, but still doing it. And I'm doing it with how I show up for people in my life, but really, really importantly, how I'll also show up for people digitally in these spaces, and so that they can experience my greatest gifts, even if I'm not like right in front of their face. I think that's so important because I like who I am. I like what I bring to the table. And if it can help other people, like it's all good. My dad always said, be a servant leader. And I'm really, really taking that into consideration. And I'm being very intentional about that as my life goes forward.
Knuckles on that. Let's go.
Bang.
Let's go.
Bang, bang.
That's my language. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're at that point
All right.
where I ask the question that I ask everybody at the end of this podcast. So I want you to envision you have a mirror in front of you, and you're gazing into it, gazing into your own beautiful eyes. And this is your look at me now moment. This is between you and you. This is between you and the Dale of the past. All of the external gaze, where the only opinion that matters is the one staring you in the mirror. What's your look at me now moment? What do you have to say?
Look at me now. I think that's tough, huh? I think the look at me now thing is literally saying to my inner child, like, you don't have to protect yourself anymore. And I think there's always been this thing about protecting, name, integrity, image, my family, and being not being able to fail or falter. I don't need to protect myself anymore from so many things in my life that served me at a time, but they don't serve me anymore. And the best thing I can do is be messy, be human, be wrong, fall on my face from time to time. So that's a look at me now thing. And I think that will change so much in my life for the better. And it'll just allow me to be more free.
Those waters run deep, and there's so much permission in that for everybody that is listening, that I really love that moment for you.
Yeah.
So thank you for having it
Thank
here
you.
with all of us.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, I want to make sure that everybody can lock into your world. So how do they find you? Where do they find you? What do we do?
Social media is easy. Dale Moss 13 on Instagram, the Dale Moss on TikTok. Launching a new website that's going to have a lot of my documentary work, moss-media.co. And I think just, from that perspective, like just social platforms, I share a lot of my stuff. And that's the easiest. I've got some fun things cooking for the new year. Maybe even something like this, a little podcast action.
Hey!
But I don't want to speak too early. And that's the
You
easiest
heard it here
way.
first. Ugh.
Yeah, you heard it here first. That's the easiest way to connect with me. I share quite a bit. I'm going to start sharing a lot more and having a lot more fun. And I always say, reach out, shoot me messages. I manage and control my own social media.
You do it yourself.
No one's in the inbox.
No way.
So that's all me. No one else has access. So and I love to respond and just connect with people. If I can be additive in your life in any way, shape, or form, I want to be. And also just through you sharing things with me, I promise you, it helps me more than you know. So.
It does. I mean, I as a final note, I will say that, the antidote to shame is have someone bear witness. So
Yeah.
what a beautiful gift.
Very true. Very
What a beautiful
true.
gift. Okay. I mean, we're just going to have him back another time, people, because I could just feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, there's more.
There's always more. Gosh, I just don't even know how to wrap it up. So I'm just going to say that's it. We out.
That's a wrap.
Join us for Look at Me Now, wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to share, like, and subscribe.